Okay.
Good. So it is my honor to welcome everybody to the masterclass with Devdutt Pattanaik, hosted here by the MIT Global Humanities Initiative. My name is Wiebke Deneke. I'm a professor of literature here at MIT, and I'm also leading the Global Humanities Initiative. Last week in Korea, we actually had Devdutt there to give a keynote speech for our conference on STEM, the arts and humanities, a new concept to actually imagine the university of the future. And Devdutt talked about, can STEM, or arts and humanities, reduce jealousy in the world? And you took the audience by storm because you really showed how jealousy creates so many of the pathologies we're dealing with right now. So this is really wonderful. Now I'm all the happier to share you with my students this time also, and with the audience here online, not just in Korea. So let me quickly introduce Devdutt Pattanaik. In India, Pakistan, and many parts of Asia, he needs no introduction. When we met in the hotel, there were immediately people rushing to him for an autograph. He has published over 50 books, given numerous TED Talks. He's a columnist. He's a television host. He's one of India's most distinguished and beloved best-selling authors. He's also an illustrator and, as you'll learn, a mythologist. He's actually the first and only mythologist I really know. I study mythology a lot in terms of early Japan. You cannot avoid it. But he does it in a way that's extremely unique and that makes real changes for the world in terms of how we think about cultures, about communication, about leadership in business, politics, and so on. So that will be amazing. He will be explaining more about that. So just a few really cool things about Devdutt. He is a doctor by training. And you can feel that in his work. He's probing the obstacles to human well-being and to cross-cultural understanding in a way that is just very diagnostic now, and also includes treatment that he is giving. That's point one, a cool thing. The second really cool thing is I feel like Devdutt is a kind of a midwife in the Socratic sense for cultural truth and for kind of structuralist but also post-structuralist understanding of radical connections between cultures and between the underbelly of what drives us for the best actions in the world, for the worst actions in the world. We'll talk about that, the myths of war and peace in many ways, and very unique in that way. Now, the third coolest thing is, like, if you look at all those books, and I think not all the books are on the poster, but you have published so much. You outdo us academics by so many books. But I want to bring to your attention a few titles that are particularly interesting and that show the amazing breadth of Devdutt's work. One is a business sutra, a very Indian approach to management. Then he has a fantastic illustrated retelling of the Mahabharata. You know, instead of reading, I think, 1.8 million words and 100,000 slokas, rhymes, and epic poem, one of the biggest, longest epic poems of the world, you can really kind of absorb that with his beautiful illustrations. He has a volume called Culture, 50 Insights from Mythology, which is a really nice buffet of actually understanding how he reads mythology as a pathway really to understanding the treasure house of human experience, past and present. He has a wonderful book called Eden, an Indian exploration of Jewish, Christian, and Islamic lore. And his most recent book is Escape the Bakasura Trap, Let Contentment Fuel Your Growth. And this is about the hunger demon, Bakasura, no, the hunger demon that kind of fuels us to constantly go for more and not feeling enough. And he talks a lot about how to actually find contentment, no, in that dynamic. As in the US, we are actually hitting the holidays and Thanksgiving tomorrow. I want to make a recommendation for your folks around that Thanksgiving table over the next few days. Read this book with anybody from actually kids to adults. This is the Mahabharata for children, the boys who fought. And you see really the amazing, I hope you can see this here, the amazing illustrations. And again, instead of reading 100 slokas, 100,000 slokas, here is the Bible really of epic poetry from India now in a really nice kind of family table discussion format. This is my recommendation. Now, this is a master class. It takes two to tango, and the other partner here are the amazing students from Arts of War and Peace. If you could all open your cameras, I know some of you can, and show yourself, that would be great to say hi to the audience here. This is a course I taught for the first time this semester. We talked a lot about current conflict zones globally, international relations, how actually these conflicts are being understood through academic models in international relations, but also in the media. Then we went on to strategy books from the earliest times, including Sun Tzu's The Art of War, which is probably older than two millennia for sure. Also Kautilya, who is an Indian strategist now. And then we read a whole number of novels and tales that gave us insight into how cultures tell diplomacy and war. In particular, Ferdowsi's The Persian Book of Kings, the Japanese Tales of the Heike, the Chinese Three Kingdoms. There was a real cultural approach of the storytelling around this topic. Then we went on to strategy and war games and had big fun here with the folks from the MIT Game Lab playing those games and thinking about how we could change those narratives and gaming culture. And now we are up to actually understanding K-drama as diplomacy and war. And we are gearing up now as a collective final project, actually in 2 weeks, for a vision pitch that will present a vision pitch for a new global diplomatics to fix our failing diplomacies, which we are going to present to Wolfgang Amadeus Brillhardt, who is a special envoy to the UN on Middle East and North Africa. I have to apologize, that session in 2 weeks is going to be closed just for students, but that's where we are heading with a course, and we have the master course along the way. In many ways, I have to say that what Devdutt's work and our class and so on so much embodies the aims of the Global Humanities Initiative. For those of you who do not know what that initiative is about, it is an incubator that reimagines the humanities and social sciences for the biggest problems in our world right now, and actually with a compass towards human flourishing and planetary stewardship. And what's crucial for us at that initiative is to go into deep time, study cultures in deepest possible time, the treasure house of human experience, our species, and also deep space, studying all cultures and radically globalizing our humanities disciplines, which most of them are still very much centered just on the Anglophone even, or European and American experience. So in that sense, today's masterclass really represents the best of what we can do and present from the Global Humanities Initiative. And one just a brief thing here, an announcement. The next public event of the Global Humanities is, and Johan, if you could put that into the chat, that would be great, is a forum we'll have on December 12th. This is actually a presentation by our pillar number 9. We have now 9+1 huge kind of challenge topics around which we do research and projects, and this is the so-called public literacies, civic systems, media and emotional intelligence pillar. Our game folks that I mentioned, Rick Eberhard and Mikael Jacobsen, will be leading this together with Lana Cook, who is at MIT actually leading the Systems Awareness Lab with Peter Senge, and there are going to be a few other guests there too, and we'll focus on 2 big projects we are doing now. There are AI tools for democracy and self-awareness, and changing the game of diplomatic hegemonies, games against oppression. So you're all welcome to join that for December 12th, and it will be in the chat. So a shout out for the Global Humanities Initiative. If you don't know us, sign up for our mailing list, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We'll soon have a trailer on STEMMA and our Korean annual conference forthcoming, and also this lecture. If you have to leave earlier, can only see parts, you can actually catch up and see that on our YouTube channel. So the way I would like to run this masterclass today is that we'll hear from our master here today, India's Chief Belief Officer, from Devdutt for 30 minutes for kind of a lecture. We'll then open up actually to the master class and to the students. They have prepared so many more questions they want to bring to Devdutt. We'll be culling some of those questions out, and there will be the space for students really to interact with our master today, and then we'll opening it up for the audience. The event will be for 1.5 hours. So without further ado, Devdutt, please take it away. Very much looking forward. Thank you. Please join me in welcoming Devdutt Pattanaik for the first time at MIT. It's a real honor to have you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for this invitation. I'll try to share my screen. I hope you can see the screen. Is it visible?
Yes, visible to me.
Is it visible to all? I just want to check that. If it's visible to all, or is it paused? Because I'm doing this for the first time. I normally never use screens, so I'm just trying to figure out.
I think it's fine. Everybody says it's fine. Looks good.
It's fine, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
Okay, good. So there you go. So my name is Devdutt Pattanaik, and I talk on mythology. And today we'll be talking on Sun Tzu, Kautilya, and you. And the you part is very important because when we talk about mythology, we are talking about cultural truths. And I want to take you first on a journey of what is mythology and how do you apply it to these literary classics. So, first few minutes, I will just explain to you how what is mythology exactly, and how it is relevant to modern times. And then I will go into the subject at hand, and then we will take it from there. So that's the plan in which I will be functioning. So the first question to ask is, we have to look at culture and see culture as something which emerges out of nature. So nature has existed without human beings. And when we use the word nature, I'm talking about the world of physics, chemistry, and biology. I am talking about the world where ants exist. And ants can be found in almost every part of the world. It is found in every continent. But when ants have to live in a different ecosystem, they have to go through a genetic modification. And there are almost 15,000 species of ants who live in as many ecosystems around the world. Human beings also occupy almost every ecosystem around the world. But how do they do this? Humans do this by creating culture. And culture is the product of human imagination. The one thing which differentiates human beings from the natural world is our ability to imagine. And imagination creates alternate realities. So that is how you try to understand imagination. Alternate realities, what if situations. What if I can create an alternative, and that enables me to create two things. I can create tools and I can create tales. So I can create stone tools, I can create technology, I can create steam engines, railroads, internet, I can create weapons, I can create nuclear weapons, I can create technology. But I also create stories, and stories are where mythology comes in. Now, between the two, tools are tangible, but tales are not tangible. The impact of a tool is visible and measurable, but the impact of a tale is not visible and cannot be measured the way you can measure the impact of a tool. Which brings us to what exactly is myth. Now, the simple way to understand myth is to remember that science is about the world of measurement. It is trying to create a world which is predictable. It is based on rational thought. It is creating a predictable world. It is everyone's truth. So it is your truth. Everybody will agree on it, or at least attempts. It tries to create everyone's truth. So laws of physics, laws of chemistry, the rules of nature, the biology, how biology functions. But when it comes to mythology, we are talking about what people believe in. So it is not objective truth, it is subjective truth. It is what you believe in. It is your emotion, your identity. The word identity has become very, very popular nowadays. But what you believe is it. It's a world of feelings. And this is an unpredictable world. You can't, it is not as predictable. Like all humanities, the problem of predictability comes in. With science, the predictability is very strong. Physics, you can predict. Chemistry, you can predict. With botany, zoology, the predictability exists, but it is not as predictable as physics and chemistry. But the moment you come to the world of economics, politics, predictability starts to drop. The world of imagination comes in. The moment human beings come in, that's where predictability starts to go down. So the best way to understand myth is to use the definition that I use for people is other people's truth. Not everybody thinks the world is the way you imagine it to be. Other people have other imaginations. And that is myth. So the word myth, of course, comes from the Greek word mythos, which is storytelling, the tales that we tell, and the stories that we inherit from our ancestors. So when you were born, you did not come with the tales or with tools or with skill sets. But as time passed, as you started reading, um, so belief can simply be a theory. I'm hearing Jonathan say that it is what you believe in. You call it theory, but if other people may not agree with it. So that is the thing about mythology. The mythology is other people don't have to agree with what you think it is. It is other people's truth. Other people believe in God. Other people believe in rebirth. Other people believe in justice. Justice is not a fact. It is a assumption of a culture. Equality is not a fact. It is an assumption of a culture. God is not a fact. It's an assumption of a culture. Rebirth is not a fact. It is an assumption of a culture. And that is an important thing to remember. The reason I say always talk about measurement is because science values measurement a lot. Mathematics, the STEM subjects are all about measurement. None of them can measure jealousy. And when we talk about something which is a matter of faith, we always ask, is it fact? Is it fiction? Where do you locate faith of a people? You believe in justice. Where do you locate it? You believe in equality, but people around you may not agree with you. How do you deal with other people's truth? And that is where the relevance comes in. Because when you look at a horrific act of war, is it a political act? Is it an economic act? Or is it based on a belief system? If it is a political act, you can argue the politics. If it is an economic act, you can argue the movement of resources, labor. You can talk about per capita income, GDP. You can talk about agency, freedom. But the moment we talk about belief, I believe in something, how do you counter it? Because belief is not rational, it is indifferent to logic. Words like justice, words like equality, words like God, words like rebirth, all these ideas, the mandate of heaven, all these are belief systems which shape different societies. They may not be your society, but they are valid for other people's society. And that's an important point to remember, which brings us to the context, the context of the you part. Everybody watching this talk right now is in a post digital age. You all grew up with a digital technology. You all take the industrial revolution for granted, electricity for granted, Wi-Fi for granted, running water for granted, urbanization for granted, planes for granted. You know, we can talk across the world right now because of this technology. But the moment you have this concept of a United States of America, a nation state, these things did not exist at the time of Sun Tzu. These things did not exist at the time of Kautilya. The world that we are entering through literature is an agricultural ecosystems where state formation was just beginning. It is 2000 years ago. It is in a river belt, and you need to understand the context in which this literature exists to be able to make sense of it in its own terms so that you can bring that knowledge back to your world, which is post digital, post industrial, post nation state. Even the definition of religion as we know it emerges only around 300, 400 years ago. It did not exist before that. So, your myth, the myth that you live in, is based on individual rights. It is based on justice, equality, nation state, theism, atheism, social mobility, which you take for granted, universality, that there should be something called universal human rights. All these ideas would have been alien to Sun Tzu in China and to Chanakya or Kautilya in Arthashastra or in India. Their myth was about family loyalty, about social order, hierarchies, villages, caste, birth. They didn't have a universal view of things, they had a parochial view of things. The world was limited by the horizon that they could experience. They would not have thought about talking to people in different parts of the world. So it's a very different way of looking at the world. The way you look at the world is not the way they looked at the world. And therefore, when you approach them through judgment, if you approach them through a sense of combat, that your truth is better or one of your truths should exist, then you miss the point. Always approach other people's truth in the spirit of curiosity, not pretend curiosity, but in the of genuine curiosity where you want to understand how the other person thinks and what are the common areas that you have on which you can establish a relationship. Which now brings us to the topic at hand. So now we enter from this world of other people's truth, we'll enter, try to appreciate how was China's truth different from India's truth. But not the China of today. It is the China of almost 2,500 years ago. It is the India of over 2000 years ago. So it's a very different China. And therefore, if you look at the way I've taken screenshots of the two geography, you will notice that I am following a it's not aligned to any political map because this concept of borders as we know it with visa control, passport control did not exist in this period. And China, if you look very carefully, is in the coastal region. There is the China Sea. You can see the coastal region, and you can see the rivers flowing. The river is flowing in the eastward direction. There is the Yellow River. There is the Wango River, the Yangtze River, the river plains that are emerging. And this is where these states were emerging. And at the time of Sun Tzu, were in relentless war for generations and generations. 500 years of non-stop battles taking place with a few years of peace. There were constant fights going on at this time. Parallel to this, now let's look at India. The geography looks so different. You have the Tropic of Cancer passing over here. In all probability, Kautilya would never have traveled south of the Tropic of Cancer. He would have lived in the northern part and would be dealing with trade routes going towards the west and east to the sea and the ships sailing to distant land. His was a land of diversity and, more importantly, dynamism created by the monsoon winds. Unless you understand the monsoon winds of India, you do not understand India because the monsoon winds creates a constant connect of the subcontinent with Arabia in the west and Southeast Asia in the east. Every summer, the wind would blow in such a way that ships from Arabia would travel to the west coast of India, and ships from the east coast of India would travel to Southeast Asia. Every winter, the wind would be reversed after the 4 months of the monsoon season, in which you could not travel through the land. In India, even today, for 4 months when it rains, it is called Chaturmas, or the 4 months when people are supposed to be sitting at home, not traveling. Because now, of course, we don't think like that. But imagine an ecosystem where you don't have tar, concrete roads, you have dirt roads, mud roads. When it rains heavily, there's flash floods. There is the river is in spate. It's a very different ecosystem that we have to imagine that world where for 4 months nobody moved. The Buddhist monks would take refuge in their caves for 4 months, and when the rains came to an end, the ships would sail again. From Southeast Asia, the ships would come back to India on the eastern coast. On the western coast, the ships would sail back to Arabia. And that's how trade would happen. And this trading is what shapes this ecosystem. Now, these are the two very different ecosystems. Broadly, the relatively speaking diversity in China was relatively lesser than the diversity in India. Relatively speaking, there wasn't the constant cycle of the monsoon winds, while what is common between them is they were river valley civilizations where farming took place. In the northern part of China, wheat farming took place. In the southern part of China, rice farming took place. The region that Chanakya inhabited, which is on the eastern side of the subcontinent, was a rice growing zone. Rice is grown multiple times a year, which creates a very rich ecosystem. Post rains, you can grow rice, after which you collect the water, you can grow rice. So, rice is a very important crop. Wheat is grown only once a year. It's an important point to remember because the economics and the geography shapes the economics shapes the mythology shapes the politics. They're all interconnected. Which brings me to the idea of the elephant. Now, ancient China had elephants and ancient India had elephants. Now, I'm talking about 3,000 years ago. 3,000 years ago, that is 500 years before Sun Tzu, 800 years before Kautilya, you have elephants in both regions, in China as well as in India. However, today, when you talk about it, there are no elephants in at least the major part of China, while elephants are even today very much part of the Indian ecosystem. Many Indians worship a god who has an elephant head. This bronze image that you can see from China is one of the few legacies of memories of elephants existing in China. Now, why is there this interesting phenomena? One part of the world chooses to use elephants and use it as a productive economic animal. In fact, the elephant is linked to prosperity and wealth and power. So it's a political symbol, it's an economic symbol. However, in China, the elephants were considered as pests and were driven out as land was cleared for rice farming. And elephants were completely wiped out from the ecosystem. So one culture looks at it as a pest, and the other sees it as a symbol of economics and politics. This reveals now, if it was rational, then there should be the same decision taken across geographies. But the moment you realize something else is at play, is it the work of geography? Is it a function of the monsoon? Or is it a belief system where an animal starts being seen as sacred and important that ensures its survival? Rationally speaking, the monsoon climate makes it very difficult to travel in wet ecosystems, while elephants make it easy to travel across floodplains. If there is a flood, you can travel using elephants. Now, this brings us to another aspect of India and China, the notion of kingship. The idea of China, the symbol of China is on the left side, and you can see the symbol of China is the middle kingdom, the central kingdom. It is the central kingdom, and you can see how it is a square shaped logograph with a line in between. And the tension, the big narrative in China, especially after Sun Tzu's time, is order and peace comes when everybody is united into a single unit. And therefore, China always had the idea of a emperor. There is the heavens above, but on earth there is the emperor who has been given the mandate of heaven. And as long as people are united by the emperor and he protects everyone within the Great Wall of China, which comes later, much later, but the idea of the walled city within which sits the dragon throne, on which sits the emperor, is a very important cultural idea in China, which has been around for 2000 years. The unification of China happens after Sun Tzu's book is written. After 500 years of war, the solution is unite and create a single idea. And even today, that is how the idea of China, if you read the history of China, it's about dynasties. And the dynasties are fragmenting and uniting. Whenever there is fragmentation, it's the Warring States period, the Spring and Autumn period. And then you have these dynasties controlling. You have the Qing dynasty, the Ming dynasty, the Yuan dynasty, the Tang dynasty, the Song dynasty. You have these dynasties. You cannot do this for India. When you come to the Indian subcontinent and you ask, can I have such a structure? You will not get it. When people mention the Mauryan Empire of Kautilya, it is only North India and parts of Central and Deccan India. It's primarily like this image which I've shown you of a wheel. This is the capital of the king, and there are these highways which radiate out of the capital to the periphery where the various markets are. The ports are here, the eastern port, the western port, the mountain passes through the Hindu Kush mountains to Central Asia, through which they would eventually go to China. But that's what the king controlled. He had this one nodal center through these highways. He did not control the land, he controlled the highways. His wealth came from toll taxes. That's all he controlled. This is the world of Chanakya. It's a kingship is a different model, and we will elaborate on this as we go ahead. So now look at the manuscript. Now I'm just giving you two photographs to give you a visual sense of two different ways of looking at the world. On one side, you have the bamboo staff, and you can see the scripts written in a very meticulous vertical alignment, very, very organized way. And whenever I think of China, I think of the walled city. Today, of course, nobody talks of the Great Wall of China. You talk about the firewall, but it is still the wall. And you have this sense of linearity and very clear grid lines, which is the way you imagine. You think of a film which shows you Peking and the Forbidden Cities, of course, which came much after Sun Tzu, but they are always shown in a very grid like format. You cannot imagine India in a grid like format. It is a collection. This is a collection of palm leaf manuscripts. These are organic, decaying, unless you copy it again and again. These are written using very birch bark is used in the northern part of India. Palm leaves are used in the southern part of India. Northern part of India uses a paintbrush to write. The southern part of India uses a stylus to write. The number of scripts are many, but of course, in the time of Chanakya, in the time of Kautilya, you have basic broadly Brahmi script, not the script that I'm showing you over here. This is a descendant of the Brahmi script. But why the script is important is because it gives you a sense of the culture again. If I look at the logo graphic, I hope this, I don't read Chinese, so Webke, you have to tell me whether what I've copy pasted is correct. But this is what Google Translate told me is the art of war. Now, the thing is, what the logographic script is people from different parts of China, from different parts of China who spoke different dialects could read the same script and understand what was being said. And therefore, the design of the logographic script was designed to unite a number of people. So you have the Mandarin script, you have the Cantonese script, you have the simplified script, but different people can read the same script, pronounce it differently, but mean the same thing, which is a very radically innovative way of looking at a script, where you see the same thing, you say different things, but you mean the same things. It is not the way the Indian script is written. Please look at how the Indian script is written. And if you look at the Indian script over here, I'm trying to figure out how this thing works. Sorry, I'm using the mouse. I don't know if you can see the mouse. But the Arthashastra, it is written in a with consonants and syllables. So it is pronounced exactly the way it is written. So this is the sound Artha Sha Shastram. Arthashastram. Very specific. Every consonant, every vowel is specifically, very perfectly designed at an, the only script, the script, more than the script, it is the sound, the alphabets, the consonants, and the vowels have been used very cleverly. The best elaboration of this idea later comes in the Hangul script, which is written in Korea, but that's a different topic altogether. But the script tells you a different way of looking at the world. Now let's look at the purpose of how these books were written. When we talk about the art of war, we are talking about a person who's a general of an army who wants peace. He's sick and tired of war and he wants to create peace. Now, this is in complete contrast to Kautilya, who is not seeking peace, he is seeking expansion. So, Sun Tzu is a general in a world of violence who does not want violence but knows the value of war in preventing war. He knows the importance of war and he uses war, but his aim is to create a peaceful, orderly ecosystem where people listen to what they are told. Kautilya is coming from a very different mind space. His story, if you read the story of Kautilya and whatever legends we have of him, the legend tells us that he is enabling a young prince to establish a kingdom. So it's a 0 to 1 story, from a not from a fragmented reality to a single reality. So to many to one is what is happening with the art of war. The book of success, that is the meaning of the word Arthashastra, the book of success, or more specifically, the guide to success, is meant for a young man who has nothing to become something. And basically, Kautilya is dealing with an ecosystem of extreme lethargy where people are not interested in growth and progress. There's a lot of corruption, indulgence, indolence. And he is coming in and saying that people should be dynamic, they should create something. And that is what he's trying to create. And that is what the purpose of the guidebook of success is: to expand, to grow, to transform, to change. And war is a instrument for that. So the mindsets are very different. Both think strategically, both value the human insights, both are very careful about resource management, both of them depend on the king. Sun Tzu needs a king, Kautilya needs a king. Sun Tzu is a general who needs a king, and Kautilya is a minister who needs a king. But the difference is discipline is the most important word that leaps out of you when leaps at you when you read the art of war, while the book of success is highly manipulative. It is constantly waiting for an opportunity to grow. So it thinks at a very, very different, very, very, very different. So you see this so I'm looking at some of your contents and I can give it to you in writing, there's a lot of anxiety emerging from the words that are being heard, because what you write out there reveals so much about you. So that's what I do for a living. I read things and I listen to things and I decode things. But I will come to that later. But look at the boundaries that emerge. The boundaries that emerge from the two worlds. The art of war very clearly has a wall that decides what is outside and what is inside. There is an insider view of the world and an outsider view of the world. And the wall becomes important. But when it comes to China, to India's book of success, you have the circle of kings. This is a very unique idea. If you remember the wheel, the spoked wheel that I showed you, the central part of the book, the central part is where the king collects rent from lands that he is in direct control of. A little further away, where the elephant can travel, he collects taxes. Where the army can travel, he collects tribute. Beyond that is a land where he cannot collect tribute and he considers that person to be his rival. He's waiting for an opportunity to claim that as a tributary state. And beyond that is the enemy of the enemy, therefore his rival, his ally. And therefore, he has a concentric view of the world. This concentric view of the world, where in the center he is in complete control and in the periphery he has least control, is a very important model in India. And India is full of such concentric circles with kingdoms or circles expanding and contracting over time. And this is what is happening. I'll take 2-3 more minutes before I wind up, because I think I'm almost run out of time, but I have 2-3 more slides and I'll wind up shortly. And you have this idea, the Great Wall China, and creates a single entity. But the circle of kings is not a single entity. There are dozens of circles of kings in India. And therefore, when you go back to the geography of India, across the many diverse ecosystems, there are about 7 major river valleys in India. Each one of them would have at least 2 or 3 circles of kings. That's how you look at India. Even today, you have this constant fight about who is in charge. When I talk of China, in my head, Peking is clear. But when you come to India, it is Delhi is in control. Is who every state is saying we matter, we're equal. There is this constant conflict of what is called the expanding and contracting spheres of influence and spheres of control. And that is an important idea. I'm giving you these two visuals to keep in mind. When you think of Great Wall of China, you think of this wall, the firewall. But the moment you come to the Indian way of looking at things, the imagination, the worldview, the mythology changes. I've used an image from later Buddhist art, Tantric Buddhist art, and you can see right in the center is one Buddha and he's surrounded by multiple Buddhas. While the central Buddha is the most powerful, the others are not subservient to him. This is not subservience. There is no tributary state over here. It is equally powerful, but in your geography. And therefore, there is like a Venn diagram being created where there are zones in which where I am autonomous, and there are zones where I'm sovereign, and there are zones where I am a tributary state. And that is the imagination. You can look at each of these circles as a different circle of influence, a different circle of control, a different circle of kings. This is called a mandala model or a Raja mandala model. Very different visually from the wall image. And this is the big difference if you see. Going further, you see the difference in cultural thinking, the land of the chopsticks, the East Asia. Now, you see a different way of eating where the design is to create an orderly state. Versus, look at the meal that is served in the Indian context. All things are served simultaneously. You have to mix and match in different proportions as per your need. The eating is very different. Is this a standardized plate or a customized plate? While around the world you will find standardization and customization, you find if you go towards the West, you will see cutlery which is used for soup, salad, main course, dessert, highly sequential. Go towards East India, you'll find a very different model of eating. There is the bowl, there is the pho soup, the ramen soup, the soup with the chopsticks, which were designed to pick up food from a hot broth and beautifully to be used with this, and it's used for cooking. Fingers are used to eat the Indian food, where all food is kept. So it is to create a diverse society. There is an obsession with diversity in India. No matter how much people talk about unification, there is always a tension between diversity and unification. I did not show a rupee note. You have to look at the rupee note, and as a homework, try to figure out how many scripts are there on an Indian rupee note and compare it with the number of scripts that you find in a yuan or in a Singapore dollar or in a Taiwanese currency or in a Japanese currency or even the European Union. Look at the number of scripts, and it tells you the kind of challenges it faces. China mythologically is looks at it, the worldview is mononodal. There is a need to unite the state, and the conflict in the state is we were to prevent fracture. We have to unite under a single language, single entity, a single emperor, a single political entity, a single state. India is polynodal. It has multiple centers of power constantly vying for, and therefore creates an ecosystem that for the outsider looks like chaos, but is completely organized and systematic for the insider. So the outsider, I think the Chinese word for India at some point is Luan. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it correctly, but the chaotic land, because it was there is no sense of order unless you are an insider. The moment you're an insider, you know exactly how to make your way through the complex labyrinth. This is a land of negotiated boundaries, not fixed boundaries. But the final thing which I want to say before I conclude is Sun Tzu and Kautilya do not tell the full story of the respective lands. China, remember these two cultures, what is unique about these two cultures is they do not have universal ideas. They are not trying to proselytize primarily. Buddhism is not quite a proselytizing religion, but it's a new way of thinking. You can argue that it is a process, but it is not seeking to convert. It is bringing a new idea, but of course, eventually it becomes a power force and it has a political entity, but that's a different conversation. But if you look at Sun Tzu's work, it is highly legalistic. It is using force and the rule of law and meritocracy to control people and create a whole. But when that becomes too powerful, because when you have too much of meritocracy, too much of discipline, too much of rules and regulation, people get angry, family systems get challenged, the Confucian family system gets annoyed, and it pushes back. And it pushes back, and therefore there's a constant conflict between the legal way of controlling the country and the Confucian way of controlling the country. Does the family, does nepotism have a place in the world? And Buddhism brings in a slightly less violent way of approaching this. So the violence is being controlled, because with Buddhism you have an inner world conversation which is missing in the legal framework and the Confucian framework. Now, if you look at the Indian model, the problem with the Sun Tzu, with Kautilya's model is that it's highly materialistic, and India has this model known as Dharma, DAKM. And the best way to remember it is DAKM. D stands for Dharma, which is social responsibility and accountability. A stands for material success, that is the Kautilya's word. K is Kama, which means indulgence, pleasure, having a good time. And M is moksha, which is not liberation in the Buddhist sense of the word, but it is being able to look at other people and other people's needs. So, dharma is my responsibility, artha is my success, Kama is my pleasure. Moksha is when you start feeding other people. This I will elaborate when the questions come, and that is how you see the mythology of the two cultures. So that's my uh, mythology as of now. I hope it made sense, and if you have questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you so much, Devdutt. I am so very excited to see somebody comparing Sun Tzu, The Art of War, and Kautilya, because whereas Sun Tzu made it into management culture and is everywhere now, Kautilya really hasn't done that. And I think thinking about like how these books know what their role is in shaping cultures up to this moment is super exciting and hasn't really been done by academics in terms of comparisons. Really exciting. So let's actually first open it up to our students here. If you could, as able, open your cameras and let's go for some questions. And I know you have many more than you can ask, but
I've got a
perhaps
whole
from
bunch
the
of questions sent by you,
yes,
everybody.
yes, yes. Who would like to start here?
Can I start?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm very curious about like what you think of how mythology interacts with systems, like systems as in like systems of governance, for example. Like, do you think like mythology creates different systems of governance? Like based on the mythology of India, does it create like a special kind of governance system that's different from China, where the centralization mythology creates like a huge bureaucratic state that expands everywhere in the empire. And all I do is think like the systems also like kind of induce the mythology, where the mythology is kind of like a force in justifying the systems and the power systems existence.
It does. So, where do systems come from? They don't exist in nature. Nature has organic systems and they emerge over thousands of years on basis of the survival principle. And there is nobody is all powerful in nature. There is this whole thing of the predator and the prey, and there is an ecosystem that emerges. But when humans come up with systems, we are trying to create a very different world. So, why does a system exist? Now, for whose benefit does the system exist? Who creates the system is the question to ask. And it depends on the people involved in making the system. Now, if you believe there is only one truth in the world and everybody in the world should function with one way of thinking, you will create a system which everybody has to align to. Broadly speaking, in its most extreme form, the legalism of China followed that model. In fact, there's a very famous folk tale. I don't think whether it's historically accurate, but it's a folk tale that the legal system had this idea that if you come late to the king's court, you will be killed. And somebody said, if I rebel, I will be killed. If I come late, I'll be killed. I might as well rebel because then there's the chance of winning and replacing the system. So a system which sort of controls people. Where did this come from? From people who believed if everybody follows the law, the world will become a better place. And there are many such systems around the world. We can call them mononodal systems. But there are other systems, purples in the world. Like, for example, in Hinduism, if you ask somebody, what does God mean to you? You'll never get one answer. You will get complicated answers, and Indians will do the head shake. Have you seen the Indian head bob? Now, there's nothing predictable about this head bob, right? Now, imagine a person who moves his head in this way and that way. What kind of system will he create? Versus a person who says yes, no. This is a binary system. What kind of a system is this? A different system. So, different cultures create different body languages, create different systems. One tries to fix, the other keeps it fluid. The fixed system is challenged by fluid ideas. The fluid system is challenged by fixed ideas. And there's a constant tension going around that way. So you have to look at the mind of the people who create the system, and you see how Sun Tzu is coming from a place of war and he's trying to create a system of peace. Kautilya is coming from a ecosystem of laziness, indolence, pleasure, where nobody wants to work, everybody is happy with their life, and he wants to make people ambitious, aggressive. He wants people to do something. So that's what Chanakya is bringing to the table. I keep saying Chanakya because that's the common name, although technically it is Kautilya, but in India he is referred to as Chanakya. So I apologize for that. See, even here we are not sure what he should be called. Kautilya, Chanakya. Both, yes. Is he historical? Is he legendary? I'll keep moving my head. So,
Thank you so much. I have like a
Welcome.
quick follow-up.
Sure.
I'm especially curious about what like you think the caste system in India like interacts with its mythology.
Yes. So what happens with the caste system is at a broad level, so there are two parts to the caste system. One is a pragmatic part and one is an where morality comes to serious questions and people confuse the two things. So I'll first speak of the first part of it and then I'll talk the second part of it. The first part of it was if you're born into a family and let's say you are a potter's family, your family does pottery. So you will learn pottery from childhood, you become an expert in pottery. You will be allowed to marry a woman who comes from a potter's family. What does that do? That ensures that the knowledge system of the family is located within your family and this knowledge doesn't go to anybody else. You will not share it with anyone else. That gives you an ensured role in society. You're absolutely sure you play a function in society. It's decided. Right now, remember, social mobility, a word only comes after the Industrial Revolution. Sun Tzu and Kautilya never heard of these words and it only exists in the mercantile community, which was not liked either in China or in India because they broke the balance of power. That's another conversation. Now comes to the immoral side of caste. The vocations, and this happens somewhere around the 5th and 6th century AD, doesn't happen at the time of Kautilya. So you do not see caste as a big idea. Kautilya doesn't care for caste. But the idea of caste that is known today and is challenged today is the idea that certain vocations are pure and certain vocations are impure. Which means if you are doing a work of a leather worker, sanitation worker, or crematorium worker, while you cannot change your occupation, you are untouchable, unapproachable. Nobody will drink water from you. Nobody will touch your body. Nobody will accept food from you. You are socially, it is like isolation during COVID, but at a different level. You are from birth considered to be impure. Now, that is an immoral side of the caste, which has led to its discussion in global forums about annihilating caste. That side. So there's a pragmatic side, and then gradually you have this concept of purity and pollution. If you talk about caste without the second part, people miss the point of the second part. The first part sounds very rational, sounds very scientific, sounds very good. But the second part is where it starts losing its moral ground. So that's how you understand the caste system. How many of you all have heard of the visa? When you enter a country, you need a visa, right? Right? Now imagine if I have to travel to America, America asks me, first it asks me my financial statement. Are you rich enough to enter our country? If I give them a financial statement which has a lot of money, they say, okay, you can get the visa, you can travel to our country multiple times. If I say I have no money, they ask me, do you have the skills to enter the country? So I give them a set of skills. I have these skills to enter the country. They say, okay, you can come to the country. So there is a border and a boundary being created, which only if you are rich or skilled are you allowed to enter the country. The third reason to enter the country is you are a refugee, you're desperate, and out of humanitarian reasons, I allow you to enter the country. But these borders is exactly what the caste system does. It is creating borders which controls the economic and political distribution of wealth and power. And these are the exactly what a nation state does is what a caste system does. The difference is caste system has an additional quality which is not there in the world. It's unique to India, the idea of pollution and purity. And now this is happening around the world. So you see certain groups of people being branded as dirty, as terrorists, as they should not be around us. What we're using words like bigotry and all that, you can see this idea of purity and pollution entering nation state, saying that America belongs to this pure race of people. The moment the word purity and pollution comes in, you talk about the dark side of caste. So it's a big topic, but I've tried to simplify it to the best of my ability.
Wonderful, thank you. And just in the interest of time, let's combine some questions. So, and then you answer whatever you want of it, more briefly, so that we can have students and then also the broader audience. So, I'm just going to call on you guys because I want you to have the opportunity to ask, and I know you're excited about that. So, Ellen, Ava, and John, why don't you go ahead? and you ask your question, and then Devdutt can kind of pick out a brief answer. No?
Are they putting it in the chat box or how are they doing it?
You can. I think you can just speak up, Ellen. Yeah, Ava, John, can you hear me?
I guess I can start.
Uh-huh.
Has there ever been a moment in your life when a myth or story suddenly changed how you understood something happening in the real world?
Great. Let's go. Just wait. We'll have the other questions so you can know it. Alan and Ava.
I was gonna ask about his TED Talk.
Good.
Okay.
Go ahead. What anything
Um,
goes, and I really want everybody to have a chance to ask. That's why we are bundling the questions. You want
yeah, I listened to your TED Talk and I was like curious, like if like what are like the sort of like if you have any like sort of like pract like if you could like so I understand that there's issues about like people not taking into account like other people's worldviews when working across borders, but like I guess like I was curious more like what are the practical drawbacks and like how we can solve it compared to just like understanding the issue, I guess is
Okay.
I feel like what your TED Talk covered.
Okay.
great, Ava.
Hi, my question is, how do you envision the role of mythology in our culture and society evolving throughout the remainder of this century and beyond?
Okay.
Wonderful. And you know what? Why don't we take all the questions now? Because I also want the audience to have a chance. It's so rare to have you here. Very precious. Kelly, go ahead.
Thank you so much for coming in today. I was reading a little bit about your healthcare background and your medical background, and obviously you're into literature and mythology. So it's so fascinating to hear. I'm personally really interested in going into healthcare, but I'm also a part literature major, so I definitely have experienced, I guess, the sometimes the tension of trying to balance the two. So I just wanted to ask your advice career wise of how you would best, I guess, advise me to not lose passion for both of them and try to do both going forward after I graduate.
This will be great.
Okay.
Kelly's writing a thesis with me, so this will be very inspiring to hear. Kent, go ahead.
Hi. So, yeah, I was wondering if you had like a particular
I
um
can't, I can't see you. Okay.
oh
Yeah.
hello.
Hi.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had like a particular like myth that you could like or like a personal favorite that you could like reference for us. Particularly like in the scope of like for our vision pitch for like our final project for the new Global Diplomatics
Okay.
NGO.
Okay.
And that's the diplomatics platform we are working on together. Actually, Devdutt is a lab leader for the diplomatics platform for the Global Humanities Initiative. So this is great. And then let's have Tony and Manu.
Yeah, hi. I feel like a lot of the questions are kind of being answered already and asked, but so I was just kind of wondering how exactly does your like profession in medicine like sort of relate, or why did you like sort of change from medicine to literature and mythology, I guess?
Okay.
Wonderful. And Manu?
Hello. So trying to think of a question that hasn't been asked. Have you ever come across something you would consider like a modern myth or like a modern mythology? Or do you
Okay.
think I guess our modernity needs our own version of it, or will we call it something else?
Okay.
So wonderful. You have a bouquet of questions, and imagine yourself, like Cicero dialogues often happen under oak trees where the discussions are running. And since I wrote a book on masters literature, Chinese masters literature, and kind of the philosophical masters like Confucius and Lao and so on, I'm imagining this. We are probably under a Bodhi tree with which gives us enlightenment, like the Buddha. But if you could, there's no way to really answer everything, but pick out a few things. We do want to have also some time then to let the audience in, but these are all
Okay.
exciting questions. So take your pick from the bouquet.
So let me tell you before I begin with the Bodhi tree. So the Bodhi tree, which is very popular across the world, is considered inauspicious inside the house. You never plant a Bodhi tree inside the house because it will destroy the foundations of your house. It's a very dangerous tree. Its roots will go and break the foundation of the house and the walls of the house. So while it was a holy tree for the Buddha, Buddha was acceptable so long as he never entered the house because he was a monk. And this is an idea which people keep forgetting. Inside the house, you keep fruit trees and flower trees, which give you economic benefits. And they are short living plants. But a Bodhi tree is a long living plant. It was always kept outside the village. It is always outside. Holy men are not allowed inside the house. They're always outside the house. So it's very good to learn about. Teachers are good, but don't enter the house. Inside the house, we have. So that's a question to think about. Now, the first question was about. I kept hearing the word real world a lot. So how many of y'all believe that Sunday is a holiday? Raise your hands, or you can just press the button. How many believe Sunday is a holiday? How many of y'all believe weekends matter? Right? Now, Sunday is a holiday is a Christian concept. Saturday is a holiday is a Jewish concept. Friday is a holiday is an Islamic concept. So the real world systems are based on mythological ideas. So if you want to give up mythology, you need to be very clear that you want to give up these holidays, because the idea that you need to rest every 7 days is a mythological idea, not a real idea. There's nothing natural about the weekday. And this is something that people forget, that in the early 20th century, the industrials, the owners of industry and the workers of industry, one was a Christian group, the other was a Jewish group, and they had an argument on which day they should have a holiday. And because they could not agree with it, you ended up with the famous weekend, which started in the industrial time. Otherwise, you had 6 days of working and 1 day of holiday. But when you had the Jewish lobby and the Christian lobby managed living together, they had to come up with a new idea. And now with the Islamic world coming in, maybe we need a 3 day holiday, which is Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But remember, these ideas did not exist in India because it's a lunar calendar, and you can take a holiday whenever the god takes a rest for 4 months. You can sleep and you decide when the holiday is. Nobody decides. Every caste will have a different holiday on a different day. So there you have mythology does play a role in. It's just that you do not realize it. The second question was about the TED talk. When you look at the world as a problem to be solved, is that natural, or is that a software that has been downloaded in your mind? Just as a computer cannot work without an operating system, your mind cannot exist with a mythology. And your mythology says the world is a problem that needs to be solved. It's called a savior complex. It's a savior myth. The messianic myth that I will save the world because the world is going through a horrible phase. This is not a global view. This is your view. Many cultures in the world do not think the world is going through a terrible time and everything is collapsing. Many people think the world goes through cycles, like the waxing and the waning of the moon. You may think the world is waning right now, but there are many people who think it is waxing right now. So depending on which part of the political spectrum you belong to, either things are getting better or things are getting worse. So the idea of the world as a problem to be solved is rooted in a Christian, Islamic, and a Judeo-Christian framework that believes in a messianic worldview, Old Testament followed by a New Testament, problem versus solution. The world needs to heal. The world is traumatized. These are all Judeo-Christian concepts. These are not Chinese concepts. These are not Indian concepts. They do not exist in half the world. But because we live in an ecosystem which is dominated by a Judeo-Christian framework, we are taught from childhood that the world is a problem, especially engineers. Engineers are obsessed with solving problems. Everybody believes they are a messiah. Every billionaire thinks he's going to save the world. And you know what the Taoist monk will say? If the most fruitful tree dies in the forest still survives. So remember that. Somebody asked me about about visions. And what vision should we have? The idea of a vision statement comes from the myth of the promised land. this belief that there will be one day a land of milk and honey. So I began my career in management by explaining to people that the modern corporate world is based on Christian mythology, where you have a vision statement, mission statement, objective, goal, key result areas, KRAs, key performance indicators, KPI. You have auditors, you have systems, standard operating procedures. This entire model is based on a Judeo Christian. If you look at the Talmud, you read the Talmud, it's a legal document. God is a judge who will, and therefore the entire document is legal. You will never find such material in China. You will never find such material in India. You will, this legal, the God is a judge. This legal idea exists only in culture that live only once. And by the way, you will notice that the leaders of America tend to be lawyers, and the leaders of China tend to be engineers. The first emperor of China was a water management expert who prevented flooding. So I think Webke will be able to tell the story of the first king of China who was an engineer. And that tells you something about the mindset of a culture. The idea of the first king in the West who is answerable to God is very different from the idea of the first king of China who is not answerable to any God. He's not following any God's rule. He has a mandate to create order and replicate order on earth. Very different model. This idea of, when you're studying medicine, so I had the question about careers, and remember what you learn in a medical college or an engineering college is skills. It teaches you a set of skills to do a particular task in order to solve a problem. It doesn't teach you human relationships. Human relationships can only be learned through art and culture. So if you're looking at some of the top billionaires and engineers in today's society, observe how terrible they are when it comes to human relationships. How many of them have happy married lives? How many of them look content? How many of them are jealous? How many of them are even now discontented despite having more wealth than half or 90% of the population? The reason is because they do not study art and literature. If they read Ozymandias, they would have realized they don't matter. But you see, we read literature but do not believe in it because we think it is fantasy. We are taught that all literature is fantasy, but they are really reflections, the deepest reflections of the human condition. So your career in medicine will teach you how to solve a heart attack problem or a brain stroke or cure Alzheimer's. But will it make you a better human being? No STEM subject can create nice people. So a graduate of STEM can only be a nice person. Either he's naturally nice or he cultivates niceness, which is what Confucius said. You have to cultivate good qualities. And he's mocked by the legalists. Even in China, the legalists would mock him, saying that people have to be treated like animals. So you see this tension in cultures within cultures. They don't have to come from outside cultures. Talking about my favorite story for a pitch deck. Think of the Greek story of the chimera. And the chimera is a creature which is part human, a chimera is part lion, part serpent, and part goat. It is a mix of three creatures. It is neither this nor this. It is a bit of a goat. It is a bit of a lion. It is a bit of a serpent, which means he doesn't fit into a neat little category. Now, nowadays, when people talk about being queer, they are referring to the myth of the chimera. And what did the Greek hero do? He kills the chimera because he doesn't fit into a neat little box, which is lion here, goat here, serpent here. The inability to, that's why the Greeks saw them as monsters. Anything which broke the neat little box of the Excel sheet. That is why when you merge cells in an Excel sheet, it becomes very difficult to create pivot tables. And then comes the final question, was about modern myth. Modernity is only a shift in technology. not a shift in mindset. Just because you have a cell phone doesn't make you better than people who lived 1,000 years ago, because you're as insecure, as jealous, as frightened, as hungry, as curious as them. So your insecurity doesn't go away because you have a cell phone with you. The Stone Age person with a rock in his hand and you with a cell phone in your hand have equal levels of security or insecurity. Modernity is only a function of technology, the tools of it. The human mind has not gone through any change in the last 10,000 years. The brain structure has not changed. The neural networks have not changed. The imagination has not changed. Emotions have. Your heartbreak today, are you saying because you have a cell phone, your heartbreak is less or more than the heartbreak? Imagine on Tinder or Grinder, you are rejected. Is it hurts more than someone 1,000 years ago being rejected by a knight in shining armor? Is heartbreak different 1,000 BC? I think Webke should put together all poetries of heartbreak over centuries and tell me whether there is a mathematical shift in heartbreak. The metaphors remain the same, which means technology does not change your mind. So modernity, we overestimate modernity. Justice as an idea is a Judeo-Christian idea. If you are Muslim, you understand the concept of adl. In Persian, it's called adl. Adl is justice. The idea of justice is very strong in Islam. The idea of equality, however, in Islam exists within the Islamic fold, not as a global human right. So these words that we use as equality, which is considered as post-enlightenment, are really Judeo-Christian in nature. And with something that nobody wants to admit, the Enlightenment values are very much rooted in the Judeo Christian tradition of Europe. It is not coming from China. It is not coming from Japan. It is not coming from Alaska, Australia, Africa, America. The tribes had different concepts of what is justice, what is equality. And have you heard this line called karma? Many people would have heard. Just raise your hand if you have heard the word karma, and I'll wind up after this. Now, how many of you all think karma means justice? How many of you all have heard the word karma is a bitch? Have you heard this line? Karma is a bitch. I've heard this line a lot of times because people think karma is a synonym for justice. Let me show you the difference. Justice comes from cultures which believe you live only once. Karma comes from cultures that believe you live many lives. When you live only once, you have only one chance. When you live many lives, you have another chance. They're two very different operating systems. Which one is better? Giving a chance or not having a chance? Shake your head. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I'm glad we had a little bit of body practice here of the Indian head shake. This is great. Let's open up for the last 5 or so minutes to the entire audience here for any questions for Devdutt here, as long as we have him in our Zoom room. And you are bringing a lot of masterful sage aphorisms to MIT initially.
Sutras.
Which is great. Yeah. Any other questions? Well then, oh yeah, Sandy, go ahead.
Thank you for your talk. This is not so much a question as a connection that I made in hearing your talk. So, the idea of India's internal knowledge systems that you brought up immediately made me think of Boston because it's often described similarly, that you have to basically know Boston to navigate the space physically and geographically. And then there's the notion of, the term Boston Brahmin.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's connected anyway to this notion of an internal knowledge system in India, because it seems like we've borrowed the language in describing a caste of people who have that internal knowledge, right? The Boston Brahmin. Thank you.
So, if I'm not mistaken, the Boston Brahmin phrase this does come from a very typical Brahmin trait of being extremely intellectual, extremely elite, and extremely closed community. While they will contribute to the welfare of the community, they will remain a closed group within themselves. And that is what defines the caste system. Why they contribute to society, they're very, very careful that they will not let the knowledge system slip away from their grasp. And that is something that is known in it's called the Boston Brahmin community. The bankers, I think, if I'm not mistaken, it applies to the very elite banking families in Boston. I vaguely remember. I remember reading about this, but it was that they resembled the Brahmins of India, who were intellectual, who were elite, who did contribute to society, but were highly closed. You couldn't. They would close ranks, and they would function like a tribe almost.
Yes, thank you. Any other question? Would I be allowed to ask you a question? But we always stop. Can I ask you a follow question unless there's something from the audience? So you really put out such a big frame for thinking about India and China, which after all are some of the biggest powers in the world now. So I wonder if we think alongside human intelligences for problem solving in the world. Sorry to talk about problem solving, but after all, we have a lot of problems. We have to do something about it. So we have IQ that created a lot of the modernity and a lot of the technological capacities and things like that, but also beautiful things like democracy and critical thinking and so on, no question. But then we also have EQ, emotional intelligence, which is more around mental well-being, human flourishing, relations. And then in our diplomatics platform at the Global Humanities Initiative, we are coining DQ, the diplomatic, and for our course, diplomatic intelligence, which is about collective trust building, the ability to make kind of deals, alliances, a little bit like the wheelmaster also. So for IQ, EQ, DQ, what do you think are the resilience of India and China based on their mythologies, the resilience to solve these kind of problems in the world? I'll leave it
You
there.
see, the IQ part deals with skills actually, whether you can solve a set of skills. And the reason some people have higher IQs than other thing is usually because of the ecosystem they live in and the kind, for example, a tribal community, if a person has been living in the forest in a particular way, he solves a particular set of problems and therefore his IQ level matches those problems which he's dealing with or she's dealing with. If you lived in a urban ecosystem, you deal with different set of problems. You live in a coastal ecosystem. So IQ really is about skill, problem solving, STEM world really, with which has its own set of problems. But yeah, it is a very good way to measure skill sets. EQ deals with the emotional capacity of people, but again looks at people from it looks at people from a vacuum. Are you having an high EQ? So you have high levels of empathy. Both of these ideas come from an isolationist, individualist mindset, or it moves from the individual to the tribal. So they only move between these two extremes. There is the individual and the tribal. They don't talk of relationship. Two individuals between the node between two individuals. And I think the diplomatic is about looking at other people's point of view. So problem solving is who defines the problem and who decides the solution. When you have the World Bank saying, I know what your problem is and I know what your solution should be, that's not looking at the other's point of view. That's paternalistic, where I tell you, it's the father telling you, I know what is good for you. And we know how teenagers react to that. But we all know that teenagers don't like being told what to do. And yet that's exactly how the large institutions of our world behave. They behave like parents who know better. So one of the biggest thing is mythology allows you to understand different operating systems and appreciating the different operating systems. Like we know today, Apple will not talk to the Google ecosystem. They will keep their firewalls in place because their business depends on the database. The data farms will not share things with each other. They are creating their own new caste systems, saying what is pure and what is polluted. So each one is creating what people would mock China for having a firewall. But now everybody is multiplying their firewalls around the world. And we are seeing firewalls being established everywhere in large language model data farms. And what you're creating is more and more walls rather than more and more windows and doors and making the walls transparent and redundant. Because you don't, when do you build walls? When you don't trust people. And why do you not trust people? Because you believe the other is a predator or a rival. He is a threat, not an opportunity. And I think the ecosystem shifts. If you look at the natural world, every plant eats and gets eaten. Every animal eats and gets eaten. But how many corporates allow themselves to be eaten? How many nations allow themselves to be eaten? How many of us in a relationship will allow ourselves to be consumed by the other without feeling exploited? That is the conversation we need to have. Because if you look at the nature's model, culture doesn't exist outside nature. It depends on nature for its survival. And I think what people are trying to do is create policies and systems. Human diplomacy will not be solved through policy and contracts. If marriage worked because you signed a legal prenup agreement, if that's the basis of a happy marriage, a prenup agreement, then that's a very tragic marriage.
Thank you very much. We are out of time now. I want to announce again the next forum we'll have at the Global Humanities Initiative on Public Literacies. It follows up perfectly on our conversation today, because talking about public literacies and, for example, AI tools for democracy and self-awareness, the problem is not that we live in an age of fake news. The problem is that we live in a world where other people's truths exist, and there's no ability to bridge actually those polarities. Now, if people knew that it's fake news, it wouldn't be a problem. So that will be one of the discussion points. And also games against suppression, the myths of gaming culture that prime us actually for types of behaviors that are not helpful for social renewal and really planetary stewardship in many ways. So that will be happening on December 12th, and I hope to see many of you there. But let's now open our mics and give Devdutt a big round of applause here, our master today, and also all of us disciples. Again, I love talking about master's literature, who were here to learn with you at outside under the Bodhi tree that almost grows outside of MIT here. Next time we'll bring you here. Thank you so much to everybody. Devdutt, if you could stay on for another minute, and also all the students, that would be great. And we say goodbye to everybody else, and happy Thanksgiving for the US-based audience.